Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The World Can Wait. Excited to be here. Excited to jump into this conversation. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. Tonight, we are going to be talking about toxic masculinity. If you've been following us for the last several weeks, we've been talking about all sorts of different cultures, all sorts of toxic cultures, just in general, a lot of things that cause problems for us that we need to address. And toxic masculinity, I personally feel, is a big one. I think a lot of issues can be traced back to toxic masculinity. So if you saw the show last night, then you're going to recognize our guests, Walter and Jardé, are here again to dive into this one with me. So yeah, I'm going to pray us in real quick, and yeah, we're just going to jump into it. Like I said, I'm excited. Thank you, God, again for this opportunity to have a conversation like this. I ask that this conversation be fruitful and productive, that a lot of knowledge will be learned by us as well as our viewers. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. Again, thank you so much for being here and be willing to have this conversation. The way we like to start almost everything off is we first want to define what it is that we're talking about. Feel like if we don't define what we're talking about, it doesn't lay the groundwork for the conversation. So, in your own words, how would you define toxic masculinity?
For me, I would define toxic masculinity as the thought that that men have to act, be, or live a certain way to define themselves as a man. As described by what social standards are.
Okay. Walter, what about you?
Ooh. I would say I think the same thing. It's a narrative being pushed upon like a certain group of people to confine them and create this stigma or this box that they have to live in. So anything outside of that is deemed like foreign, like it's a threat or something.
A threat. Okay. I feel like that's accurate though. I think I would probably describe it in the same way. It's like y'all said, this idea that as a man you have to live a certain way, and anything outside of that is deemed wrong. So what are some examples that you've either seen or that you have been made to live yourself at some point? Watch, are already ready. So what you got? I want to hear it.
Go ahead. You go first.
Oh no, you first.
Okay. Okay. Baby mother drama, those type of ordeals and or situations. I think that's the biggest. I see that, personally, and I see that, abroad, like day in and day out. It's become like a norm thing. Like I said, society standards dictate how we can and can't move, on a day to day. I would say like I won't say gender roles, but just the roles as far as a relationship. Those are my two biggest things. Examples. Everybody has a baby mother nowadays, so I think that's self-explanatory. As far as the relationship, I think we spoke about it kind of a little bit just the other day. You have certain things that it's a narrative where you confine, so you'll have certain things as far as, you're the man in the relationship, you're supposed to provide financially, you're supposed to, discipline, you're supposed to, safety, you provide everything to where it creates, like I said, a stigma where if anybody tries to flip it, and be like, all right, cool, well, I'll do X, Y, Z, but what can you bring to me? And when we do, like I said, it feels like it's an attack or a threat to people who don't view it the same way. So now we got to take a step back and be like, all right, well, if we can't voice our own thoughts, feelings, or opinions about the matter, so we just have to take it, and it creates, like I said, that confinement. Now we put in a box, so we can't do nothing to get out. We can't talk about it. We can't question it. We just have to take it. I think those are probably the two biggest. I'll save the baby mama stuff for later. Go ahead, Black.
So I say that I agree with my boy. But I like to also add that for me, the biggest one is the unsaid. And then it go. It's not. They don't physically say it, but it's the unsaid thought or idea that a man has to have everything together at all times, at all points of his life. There's not
Mm.
a time where we're allowed to falter. There's not allowed a time where we're allowed to have feelings, be soft, or anything, because we've been put into this area where we have got to be the backbone structure of every family that we're a part of, to the point where if we are falling or if we're failing, we're not a man. If we're not doing what we're supposed to do according to that social narrative, we are not a man. We're a little boy or we're just a little kid or something like that. We don't have our mind right. We don't have our priorities right. We don't get that chance to fail. We don't get that chance to be wrong. We don't get that chance to have problems. It's just you have to be. You have to be 100% at all times.
Right, and that we've talked about mental health a while ago. I think a couple times on the show. I feel like that plays a big role in negative mental health situations for men, because like you said, you can't be emotional, and it's not even just men that kind of drive that. Women take part in that too, so everybody is on you, and you can't be emotional, you can't express anything. You, like you said, you have to bottle up inside, and bottling stuff up never does anything good for you. But because of this toxic masculinity, we live in a society where it's almost like you don't have a choice but to bottle it up. You know what I'm saying? And don't, especially with the stigmas on therapy and counseling and things like that. You really are. You on your own, and you're expected to be on your own and just handle it. It's crazy.
That's right.
It's a problem. It's a problem, and I think something that hinders us even further is that it's perpetuated. You know, I didn't know if this was going to be the right segment to kind of bring it up, but there's a few things like it's perpetuated on every scale, even the scales that we don't see and or think or hear about, so loudly, right? Like me and my brother, we had this conversation ways back, and I can send you the link offline. I don't have the name for it off top.
Mm.
But there's a lady. I watched a TED talk of this lady. She's a female. I was going to say attorney. She's a female, yeah, attorney, and but she specializes in a lot of divorce cases and like family disputes, but on the men's side, and that kind of caught me off guard with today's climate, like toxic masculinity, things like that. So that drew me instantly. I'm like, okay, let me see what she got to say, because it's hard to have a man speak for a woman, and in the same, it's hard to have a woman speak for a man. So you got that disconnect right there. One. So I
Mm.
watched it, and everything she said, there was some things that stood out. One thing that she said, she's a lawyer out there in Vegas, and she was like, "There's a law that states, I can't remember off the top. Like I said, I can send you the link offline, but there's a law that states specifically that from birth to the child is the age of 4, the man is not allowed to have rights to that child. It goes automatically 100% of the time to the woman."
Mm.
And I'm like, that's crazy. Like you have a law that states, in black and white. Like I said, I can't think of it off top, but it states that from birth to 4, there's no chance for a father. The lady or the mother can be on this type of whatever, or her situation can be anything less than good for the baby, or babies or children or whatever. And regardless, it goes to the woman, and that's crazy. But those are the things that people don't want to talk about. Those are the people, like I said, if especially as a grown folk, if you're a grown individual and you can't take accountability or responsibility for the action that you take that lead to certain consequences, that hinders us. We out here trying to grow and be better on daily. At least I am. I know a few people of us are. So, but how did you do that? When, like I said, the stigma is not only there, one, but then it's perpetuated. So where do we go? I mean, excuse me, where do we go from there as a unit? And
Mm.
that's a problem.
Yeah, most definitely. And you're talking about perpetuating. Who who exactly perpetuates the idea of toxic masculinity? Because I mentioned men and then I said women as well, and I saw both your faces light up. Who do you feel like really keeps this thing going? Jada, you want to say something?
Yeah. So I talked to my brother about this a while back, and like I said, like, all right, so this is kind of a rant, but the way I've seen it, right, back in the '80s when they had the crack epidemic, and there was they don't tell you this, but it was structured to dismantle the black family household, and it did its job. It removed the fathers from the household, which removed the structure and integrity of the family, which made them less solid. Now, what happened was the women had to become more like the men.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
what happened with that? What happened with that was when these women would get pregnant and have children, they would have boys, and they would treat that boy as they were the man of the house, which gave them responsibilities and gave them like emotions and stuff like that they weren't ready to have. They weren't able to be little boys. They weren't able to understand it as a young man why they were being treated as a man. So when they grew up with like they grew up kind of mentally messed up in a sense where they didn't understand too much of rejection. They didn't understand too much of what they could and couldn't do because they never had to deal with it as a kid. They were treated as men,
Hmm.
and they were treated like, yo, if you cry, then I'm a, you know, I mean, I used to get whooping. So if you cry, I'm gonna whoop you. If you show emotion, I'm gonna do this. You got to be a man. You have to take over this. You have to be a man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that thought process and that narrative somehow spread to the world. That thought process spread to everybody. Because if you look into like toxic masculinity is really strong in our community, in the black community. It's like if you are if you are any type of what we would deem soft, you are not a man. You're not. You know, if you
Hmm.
can't provide for the women that you're with, they say that you're not a man because that's what men are supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to if you go out on a date, you're supposed to pay for it. You know what I'm saying? If you have a woman in your house, if you are having intercourse or relations with her, you have to take care of her. That's just the thought process in general, and that's just like overall.
Hmm.
And I believe that came from that came from the dismantling of our structural family integrity. Because before, if you would look back before, there wasn't these kind of norms at all. And like I said on our talk yesterday, when you get into more marriages and stuff, gender roles and stuff like that start to disappear because they become more of a partnership. Like if I
Yeah.
can't do it, wherever I fall short at, you pick up. So I say that like men do boost the toxic masculinity thing in the terms of like we're telling each other like, yo, don't do this and don't do that. Because as a man, like if I was to tell my son not to do certain things, it's to protect him because there are people out there that if you open up to, they will use all of that against you.
That's
There are
true.
people out there that if they see you like showing emotion later on, they're gonna use it against you. And I said that the women do that boost that toxic masculinity because for one, I cannot understand and I cannot fathom how you can tell a man about masculinity when you are not one.
Hmm.
That just blows my mind. How can you know something about being a man if you are not one? It is so much more in depth than just providing, uh, uh, providing, being a backbone, living. It's so much more in depth. And as I'm coming into being a more adult man, I'm 27 now. I'm starting to understand things that I didn't understand when I was 20 and 21 and 22.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. I feel like that makes a lot of sense, and I hadn't thought about the whole idea of the crack epidemic. Like obviously, women had to take up roles because they had to be mom and dad at the same time. There was no other choice. But the idea that it's a generational thing because these boys had to be brought up or were brought up in this way. Now that just continues to get passed down year after year after year to the next generation. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, what was taught to them, and this is like a term I use when I talk about it. What was taught to them was not exactly masculinity, but it was a woman's idea of masculinity.
Right, right. Because, like you said, how can you tell me about masculinity when you have not walked through masculinity in any way, shape, or form? And the way I kind of look at it, I feel like this is something that is either taught on purpose or inadvertently taught to us by men in our lives. But I feel like it's something that women expect, even if they don't directly teach it, they expect it based on their understanding of it. And so then when you don't provide that understanding of what masculinity is, then that woman is now deeming you not a man. Any other men that have bought into that are also now deeming you not a man. It's definitely a double-sided thing. You get it from both sides. But how do you go about breaking that on a, I don't even know, can you break it on a large scale? It's something that you have to break down piece by piece and just in your sphere.
I've seen. Oh, go ahead, Leblet.
I think it's kind of like how we brought up the other day, where, say, for instance, you in a relationship, and it's always the outsiders looking in. If I was with him or if I was with her, I would expect them or I would do this and that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that on a grander scale. If we work how we work out, then that's cool. The stigma, I mean, our relationship shouldn't be dictated by XYZ. I think, I don't know if I really, I want to. That's the cancer in me. I want to see it, but for real, on the real level, I think like it's not gonna happen. So you just gotta, like, as far as a change for it on a large scale, I think for real, we just gotta take it on as an individual and be like, hey, listen, you know what? This is what I bring to the table in any regard, whether you just my people, or we actually in a relationship, or we in a group, or an employee-employer type of relationship. Regardless, we have to take that and break it down and be like, hey, listen, you know what? Forget the scale. This is what I do, XYZ. And you can either pick it up and run with it, or we can leave it and just do on about our own business. I want, like I said, I want to say it that it can work. We have to break it down. But that's, a hope and a prayer. I think realistically, we would just have to do it on a lower scale, as far as like, me and you would have to sit down and do what we can, or fit to fix whatever. Or, in a relationship, you would have to do that same regard. I know what the media, or I know what these books and movies, or I know what they tell you, but in here, us, me and you, we're in this thing together, not them. So here, let's talk about and let's see what we can do for this right here, right now,
And that goes back to kind of go ahead, Trey.
Oh, I was gonna say, all I was gonna say is, I've seen slight changes, especially with men, being more involved in their kids' lives and everything like that. That's golden, because, like I said before, if it's just like the woman on her own, she can only teach like her idea of masculinity and or how she wanted to be treated by a man, or by her idea of a masculine man. So like that right there is golden. I've seen a lot of men like coming into more of like, their feelings, are like talking more in depth about what masculinity is to them and stuff like that. So like that I have seen. So I think that we're making it slowly. We're making a slow crawl towards it. I just think that like, as like, for us to heal the whole narrative, is like us as men have to be continually like be more involved in like our young men's lives. Like, even if you just like a basketball coach, or football coach, or something like that, having that male like role model is just golden. It's just golden, because like that teaches them like, yo, if you like some things, like my coach taught me and everything, like I get hurt, my coach teach me like, yo, it's all right that you hurt, you know what I'm saying? It's okay to sit out for a minute. You don't have to sit up here and be strong 24/7. And if we can like stay and teach the next generation that, and hopefully the next generation teaches the next generation, we can cure that in a couple of years, or a couple of generations, honestly.
Yeah. That's what's up. I ain't never had a coach tell me nothing like that. It was always, you get right back up, you shake it off. Get back out there. But yeah,
My foot was broke.
no. So you know, even if they wanted to, then. But yeah, I agree. I feel like that's the case for a lot of things. It's really a slow crawl because I mean, personally, I'm slowly coming out of that idea of toxic masculinity, and this is what a man has to be, myself. And that's really just been because of my marriage. And like you said, when you're in a marriage, like those gender roles that you think are gonna happen, they just like slowly disintegrate. And you have to learn to accept that. And I feel like that's been one of the toughest things for me is learning that it's okay that these roles have changed. It's okay that these roles are not what I thought they were supposed to be because we're a team and we're still handling what needs to be handled, even if I don't do the quote unquote masculine things all the time. So it's definitely a learning process, which would mean if it's a learning process for me, it's got to be a learning process for us as a whole. Um, Jade, before when you were on our rape culture episode, we had talked about kind of how toxic masculinity plays a huge role in rape culture, but not just for women, but for men as well. Um, would you mind speaking a little bit on that as far as the role that that kind of plays?
Okay, yeah, no problem. So like I told before in the last in that episode, I had an incident when I was younger, and you know, it happened to me where a couple of girls pinned me down and essentially raped me. And I never really got to talk about it to nobody because the whole narrative and the whole thought was, well, it was sex. You should have enjoyed it. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was confused. I was scared. I was like 10 years old. I ain't even talked about it to nobody really. And that I didn't date anybody until I was like 16, 17 after that. It was a long time.
Mm,
But like if I brought it up to somebody, like being a boy, not even being a man, being a boy, they would say to me, as a man, you should have liked that. That's not what I was. I was
yeah,
a confused kid. So from that point forward, it's like I guess this is what I was supposed to like. I don't know, but I didn't. I didn't like any part of it.
yeah. And it's crazy how, 'cause like you said, it's sex. You're supposed to like it. I feel like that's another role of toxic masculinity is, you know, men are supposedly just inherently sex driven creatures. That's part of who we are as men is we just like sex, we want sex, we don't need anything else but that. Then I feel like that kind of takes away from like we were talking about that emotional depth that all men have that we're not really allowed to access. You know, you're not supposed to try to get to know her on a deeper level. You're just supposed to hit. That should be your goal. And I feel like that really does us a disservice because that blocks a lot of relationships, a lot of like potential long lasting relationships, and not even all romantic ones, platonic ones as well. If your whole mindset is, you know, how can I smash? Because that's what a man is supposed to do. Imagine how much intellectual like depth you're missing out on with people around you. You know.
That thought in and of itself does, yeah, it destroyed plenty of relationships in my life. There's been a lot of women that I was just friends with. I wasn't even thinking about doing anything like that, who got to a point where they didn't want to mess with me no more or be friends with me no more because they thought that was my end goal. Because they always say that's all you men want. That's all y'all
Yeah.
want to do. That's they always say that, and it's like I haven't even propositioned you for that. I was chilling. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Mm,
like it didn't got to the point where that form they call that our ideas, and that's toxic masculinity because that's all we want and everything like that. So then they pull the narrative that like, yo, if you think you're gonna be having sex with me, you have to be able to pay for this, do that. And that goes back to what I was saying, like as a man, you always have to have everything together. You always have to have everything together. Because if you go to be with a woman, now you see what's crazy to me is if a woman doesn't have everything together, you know what I'm saying? If you meet a woman and she's having a hard time with her bills, or she's having a hard time like with her car note, or like she's just down in the dumps, mentally bad, or everything like that. The narrative as a man is that you're supposed to support her and help her and everything like that. But you will never see that happen the opposite way. If you have nothing to offer a woman, then you're not seen as a man. You're not seen as somebody that they would ever want to be with.
Mm. And I feel like that
That's just like
comes from that. I feel like that
oh, I'm
comes
sorry.
from both sides. Honestly, like I feel like, and I don't have experience dating really, because I met my girlfriend in college and we've been together ever since. But from what I've seen is not only do women expect that, but the men around you expect that from you as well. And then you get clowned if you're the one that's struggling. Oh, you can't pay your bills, bro. You ain't got no car yet. You still taking a bus, but you gonna ask so and so how you figure that's gonna happen. I can't really wrap my head around it, because I'm like, what does that mean? And does that mean that because my life isn't perfect, I don't deserve to go out and try to find love or happiness or friendship? Like I'm closed off until my life is financially perfect.
I'm gonna tell you, it is so bad that has been ingrained in our mind so bad that one of my brothers, I'm not gonna say no names, one of my brothers uh said they needed a place to stay. I invited him to my house. This man said he needed a car and a job and all this other thing, thinking that he needed to have a car and a job and everything to stay at my house. All I said was come over.
Mm,
I didn't tell you you
mm,
needed a job. I didn't say you needed a car. I didn't say you. I said all you need to do is get from your airport to my airport, and I'll pick you up from there, and you can be in my house. Not once did I tell him he needed to have a job. Not once did I say he needed to have a car. Not once did I say that you even. I didn't even say that you had to have a plan to get one or any of that. You told me you needed somewhere to stay. I told you bring yourself.
mm,
And his thought immediately was, well, let me see if I can get a job. Let me see if I can get a car. That means his thought was for him to be able to stay in my house, for him to be down on his luck and stay in my house down on his luck. He needed to have everything together. That
yeah.
makes no sense.
Yeah, that's wild. It's completely opposite of what the situation even is. I feel like that's guilt too, because we have that ingrained in us. It's bad enough to even ask somebody for help, especially another man. But then you get that help. Okay, now I gotta prove myself. I gotta prove that I'm worthy of being helped, because if you help me, you gotta know that I'm gonna get back up on my feet soon. And that's just, it's a lot of guilt that I feel like comes from this whole idea of what a man is supposed to be. And if you're not that at all times, then you messed up, you know. Um, kind of winding down here, because this is one of our shorter conversations. I want to ask you guys about a situation in your lives, just so we can give our viewers kind of an example, a situation in your lives where toxic masculinity was pushed on you, where an expectation was pushed on you, and you were either forced or you felt forced to meet that expectation. And what was that like for you?
Like you first, bro.
Huh?
You go first, bro.
No. You got it. You got it. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I have three children. And since I've since I've met my child's mother, because they are from the same woman. Since
Mm,
I've met her, there have been numerous times where, regardless of what the situation was, I had to figure it out for everybody. Like if we were down on our money or anything like that, and I asked her for help, I had to make the decisions. I had to find out where the money was going to come from. I had to find out what we were going to do. If we were going to, there was a time where I almost got put out my house because when me and her split, she said help for, she needed help with the kids, and just a couple $100 a month. Now, I told her like, yo, I just I just got into a car wreck. I just my thumb had recently just got severed off, so I just got it reattached and everything like that. So I've been down. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't really have any money right now. You know what I'm saying? To give you that amount of money. If I do, I get put out of my house because I have to pay for daycare also. She dead. She looked me dead in my eyes and told me, "I don't care. You're a man. You need to provide for your children."
Mm.
I'm like, like I can barely work right now. I just got my thumb reattached. I can't even get to work. I don't have a car. You know what I'm saying? Like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Like you think you can help me out here? She like, no, you need to figure it out. All in all, I figured it out. But that was a really, really straining time for me because I had to miss a couple meals. I had to run to workplaces. I had to ride a bike.
Mm.
But when I would tell other people about it, you know what I'm saying? Like when I opened up about it, somebody told me like as a man you don't open up. When I opened up about it, their response wasn't, that's kind of messed up that she did that to you. The response was, you should watch who you have kids.
Mm.
So you're telling me it's my fault that she acts that way? Like as a well, as a man, you knew who you was doing this, that, and the third, da 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 da. Like, she was obviously not like this when I met her. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
why would I be with somebody like that? But as a man, it was like, yo, all the responsibility is on you. You decided to have kids with her. You decided, like, you knew her as a person. You decided to have kids with her. You know what I'm saying? When everything fell out, you still have to take care of your responsibilities as a man. It doesn't matter what you have going on. It doesn't matter if you're down on your luck. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. You still have to do what you have to do.
That's a lot of
That
weight.
was a really hard time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole lot of weight, especially to then have the gall to go and open up to somebody and say, "All right, I'm gonna do this," and then that not even be reciprocated. Yeah, bro, that's tough. But I'm glad that you got through it though. But you shouldn't have had to go through it alone, and that's the problem,
Yeah.
man. Walter, you got a situation.
Uh, I'm gonna keep it short.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a kid of 2, 3. Uh, and just the ballpark it, like all of my situations as far as stemming from my kids and whatnot, it all stems from money. You
Mm.
know, that's really not the epitome, but I think that's one of the major elements of the toxic masculinity thing. Like man is equated with money, with finances, and I look at that. Like if there's, like my brother was saying, if you're anything less than what they see you as, you can't be a man.
Yeah.
And that's like everywhere you turn. Like I ain't, man. Listen, my first child, my baby, my big girl, she'll be 8 this year. I'm
Uh.
just sad. I ain't seen her in almost 5 years now. Because of the idea that, oh, you don't want to see her. And I'm gonna be flat out. I asked my baby mother. She was getting out of her job situation back in 16, and I asked. I was like, hey, while if you want to get out, not knowing if she had a plan or not, because we weren't together, obviously. But I
Mm.
asked, I said, hey, if you want me to, take care of my baby as you transition and, do your thing, I can watch. I'm fully PQS qualified, little Navy joke, whatever. I'm thinking, we're good to go. And she told me, mind you, this is years ago. No issues, no nothing. My baby was 2 at the time. And she told me flat out, she was like, if I have to stay at this job and do this and that for this and that long, I would do whatever it takes to keep my child from you.
Mm. Wow.
And I'm like, what? Like, how I got at the time, I just got a 2-bedroom apartment. The only reason I got 2 rooms is so I can have my child come stay with me. If not, I could have saved my own money, lessen my chance of, bills and things of that nature with getting a little 1-bedroom. Or I could have just lived on the boat at the time. But I'm doing
Mm.
this to open doors for my child. And just due to I still to this day don't know what happened. But I asked a simple question, and that's what I got in return. So it's always like an uphill battle. You know, I had an incident, with something like that when I was coming back to the boat. I was transitioning out of the Navy, and lady I was with at the time, the deal we had made as far as the financial situation, the deal we made was well, military no, you get BAH when you get married, right? So basically your spouse gets some of that. It's basic allowance for housing. But if y'all split, then your spouse is supposed to get some of that. I think it's a third or whatever it is in the Navy. So we had split up, and the agreement we made was you would get half of the allowance, housing allowance, excuse me. And if I couldn't get you half on the one check, then on the next check you'll get both halves. No issue. At the time, I was getting out of my place because of the baby situation. So all this was all happening all at once. And I sent her back home, and she told me flat out, it was one of them months I was running short. I was like, hey, listen, I can't get you, now, but on the next half, I got you, no problem. And she told me flat out, she was like, no, you got to give me my money, XYZ. And I was like, hey, I hear you, but I got kids I still got to feed. This, I can't, something got to get put on, on hold right now. And she told me, well, no, give me my money. Basically, forget my kid. And I'm like, that's crazy. How, and that's from her stance. So now as a father, or as a man, as a provider, again, that masculinity thing is over my head. You should be XYZ, or you should do this, and that to the 10th power. I'm not able to right now, so that, you're not a man, you this, everything but, Boom. Yeah, that's all I say about that.
Yeah. Okay. And that breaks you down, especially when you hear it over and over again after a while, because like we've been saying, it's so ingrained in our culture that this is what manhood is. This is what manhood is supposed to be. But I feel like it's so natural not to meet that because it's an unrealistic standard to have. Like you said, you had more things going on. You was just getting out of a house. You had more things you had to take care of. Jade, you said you just got your finger reattached and you got into a wreck. There's other things that you got to take care of. It's an unrealistic standard to say that as a man, everything in your life should be taken care of at all times, no matter what, as if life just don't happen to us like it happens to anybody else. So it's something that definitely has to be broken down. It's something that I think is, like y'all said, going to take a while to be broken down because it has to be broken down at a small level, but it can't continue like that because a lot of men is getting broken down based on this standard we're being forced to meet. Again, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking. As we close down, I do want to do our final thoughts, which you guys know about it. Anyone who's watching us for the first time, final thoughts is the section at the end where we give all of our guests 1 minute, 60 seconds to share the one thing that they would like everyone to take away from this conversation. Jade, why don't you go first?
All right. Thank you for having me once again. In final thoughts, I like to say that the best way that I feel we can get rid of the whole toxic masculinity narrative is we start to see men as people. And when I say men as people, I mean not as a financial gain, not as a come up, not as something to be monetary. As we grow up as men, we're taught that the woman is a prize just for being, nothing more, nothing less, just being. And for men, we are taught that we have to get to a level where we can provide for this prize so that they can have an easier life, or so that we can take care of them and the children and the structure of the household. And I feel like, for one, we have to start seeing men as people, not as a monetary value, not as a gain, as people, as a person, just like we would see anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Walter, what about you?
First I want to say, thanks again for having me, man. I think we could all take from those conversations like these, In closing, I would like to say, I would like to point out something that we all did in this video, the three of us. At some point in time, we as men had contributed to the idea or an element of toxic masculinity. I know we all gave a few examples of monetary, and I think that, like I said, is an element of toxic masculinity in itself, where the examples we give is only monetary. Not that it's our doing, but that's part of that engraved, that culture that that's thrown upon us. So I think we can take it upon ourselves, like I said, start small on an individual scale and grow from there. We have to understand, the narrative that's being pushed on us and go from there. The only way to break it is to break it. First, you got to acknowledge, what's going on, and then you move forward from there. So I think we as ourselves individually, we have to conquer that first and then go out there. You reach one, teach one. So we have to conquer ourselves first and then go out there and, teach.
I really love having these conversations because I feel like I learn so much. My idea of toxic masculinity has almost always been how it hurts women, and that the whole idea of toxic masculinity is just something that hurts women, mostly through rape culture. But as I'm learning, it's not only women that are hurt by this toxic masculinity, men are hurt as well. And because men don't talk about our feelings because of toxic masculinity, we don't always get to explain that we're hurt by this same thing. So I'm definitely glad that you guys came on and talked and were able to share. I definitely learned a lot, so I appreciate it. Final thoughts, really all I can say is that I think to break this down is going to be on men. And I say that to say we have to do a good job of being there for each other and holding each other up. If we're perpetuating this in any way, we have to self-examine so that we can stop perpetuating it. I think that we also have to be able to talk to one another, to let each other be vulnerable, let each other be emotional, and be able to be there and understand our fellow men in those situations. Because like I said, starting out, we don't talk about things as men because it's seen as soft. So we just hold all these things inside of us, and we all keep moving individually in the status quo, and we don't talk to each other about what's wrong with the status quo. So I think really to break it, it's a lot of conversation and a lot of getting deep with one another as men to finally nip this thing in the bud. Again, thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you for everyone that came and hang out with us in the comments. You guys have been very active. We really appreciate that. We will be on again tomorrow night. Charles is talking about toxic Christianity. You don't want to miss that one either. This week has been amazing, and I think it's going to wrap up in an amazing way as well. So make sure you're on tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just like always. Make sure you're following us. Make sure your notifications are turned on so you know exactly when we go live. With that, I'm going to pray us out real quick, and we're going to be out of here. Thank you guys again for this conversation. It was definitely insightful and impactful. I ask that everyone who was able to hear it would be able to walk away understanding something that they didn't before and be able to go and pass that knowledge on to someone else. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, like I said, we will be on tomorrow night at 6 p.m. and we will see you guys there.